Hello, I'm Lloyd Albritton. I live here in Atmore. Atmore has been my home. I grew up here, actually not in town, but the edge of town, out in a little area called Nokomis. My wife grew up out in Walnut Hill and has lived for many years in Atmore. For both of us, Atmore has always been our home, where we did our shopping and what we considered home wherever we were. And so we live in Atmore now and have, since my retirement, I retired back in 2008. My wife retired in 2014. Since then, we have lived on retirement income. I have worked different jobs, sales jobs, to try to make ends meet. I have taught for over 10 years, off and on, as an adjunct instructor of psychology at the local community college. On all the campuses. I've taught at the Bruton campus, on the Atmore campus, and on the Bay Minette campus. But the adjunct jobs just sort of went away with the mergers of the three colleges, and it just sort of fizzled out. And so I've worked at different jobs to try to make ends meet. Like many old people, I'll be 75 this month. My wife is a year behind me. And I've worked at different jobs to try to just make ends meet. I was taught growing up that there's no work that a man should be too proud to do when he needs to do it. So the last 8 or 10 months, starting in about January of this year, last of December, 1st of January, my wife and I took a look at the possibility of doing something that I could do at my age, physically and otherwise. You know, these jobs that used to seem plentiful when you're younger, they're just not available when you get older. In any event, I looked at doing Uber driving. But that would require me going to Pensacola or Mobile, being near an airport and picking up people and all that. So they came out with this thing called food deliveries. A couple of companies on the internet, Waiter, W-A-I-T-R, who has since changed their name to ASAP, A-S-A-P, like as soon as possible. And another company called DoorDash, which is the most prominent. And these companies advertise for people will drive and deliver food orders. And what you do, you have a little application on your telephone that they, when somebody orders over the internet, they can order from any local restaurant. And they'll place the order. In the order, they'll send it to a driver on your application, saying pick it up over here or pick it up over there, and deliver it to the person. So we started doing this, and it has worked out pretty good. We can keep our own hours, so you can sign on when you want to, quit when you want to, and you can stop and rest when you want to. And, you know, it's not the kind of job you'd quit your day job for, if you had a day job, but it's a little extra money for a couple of old retired people. And so we've been doing this without much problem for almost a year now. We have picked up food and delivered food around Atmore. We strictly stay in Atmore. You can work anywhere you want to, of course, and a lot of the younger people may go to Pensacola or Mobile and do pretty well with this, wherever they go. But we stay pretty much strictly in Atmore because we don't like to drive and be out at night, and you know, we know the area pretty good. So we have picked up at many of the restaurants in Atmore. One of the restaurants that we've picked up a number of times is a restaurant across the railroad tracks at 110 North Main called 30 Below Ice Cream. It started out as 30 Below Ice Cream, and the owner has since added a little grill called The Heat. And so we have quite a number of times picked up food at this place and delivered it to customers. They know who I am. The owner, Sean Ransoval, I know him from the VFW for several years, not a lot of years. He's not from here, I don't believe, but he came into the VFW a few years ago, and I've been in there for years. And I know him from there. Now, we're not intimate acquaintances, we're not buddies, nor have we ever had enmity or been cross with one another. But he knows who I am, and I know who he is. And so I thought it a little odd here several months ago when I went into 30 Below, and Sean had added a table over on the Heat side of the restaurant. He had added a little memo You can now talk to any of the other drivers will tell you about this, which was, I thought, a little bit hostile for some reason. They basically said, waiter and DoorDash delivers, if your order is not on this table, we don't have it. You're welcome to sit and wait, but please do not talk to my staff. Well, I assumed that some of the people had maybe distracted his staff. It certainly wasn't me. I had no interest in his staff, most of which are young girls in short shorts, and you know, it's almost like you're in a Hooters when you go in there. But I never tried to engage any of them, and so that's exactly what I did. I sat at the table when I would come in and waited until they put the order, or maybe the order was already on the table. If the order was not on the table, then I would walk through the other side and let them know that I was there. On this occasion, this was on August the 29th. It was on a Monday, right at about 11:30. I walked in the door to pick up an order for waiter/ASAP. I walked in the door to pick up an order, and the girl behind the cash register there on the ice cream side, she turned and saw me walk in. Without a word, she recognized me, and she said, "Your order is not ready yet. It'll be about 10 minutes." I said, "Okay." So I sat down at a table to wait. After about 10 to 15 minutes of waiting, she got a little buzz on her cell phone there, and she said, "Oh, this must be your order. Your order must be ready." So she walked down to the end of the counter to the kitchen preparation area, excuse me, to pick up my order. She walked directly back out, and she said, "Can you call the customer and let them know that we do not have one of the items on her order?" I think it was the steak fries. "We don't have the steak fries," and ask her if she would substitute another item. I said, "Okay." So I did. I called her. There was no answer. So I sent her a text, something to the effect, "Steak fries not available. Will you accept a substitute?" She did not answer me right away, but she did subsequently answer me and say that she would accept, I think, the pulled pork fries. I have that documented on my cell phone still. So she goes back into the kitchen. After about 5 or 10 more minutes of waiting, Sean Roundsavall comes out behind the counter, and he says to me, as I'm sitting at the table in front of the glass counters, he says, "We don't have your order. It's already been picked up." Well, I was a little alarmed at that, since I'd been sitting there almost 30 minutes. And I said, "Well, Sean, I don't understand. Your waitress already told me that you were working on the order. And she just told me a few minutes ago that she wanted me to call and clarify one of the items on the order. And I've been sitting here for almost 30 minutes. I don't understand why you're just now telling me that. When did they pick up the order?" Sean immediately grew angry, leaned across the counter and pointed his finger at me and said in a loud voice, "You are not my customer. I don't have to tell you anything." I was a little aghast at that. I said, "Well, what do you mean I'm not your customer? I come in here and pick up orders from you every day, have for months." "Yeah, but you are not my customer. You are only a subcontractor, and I don't have to tell you anything." Well, I began to protest. "Well, I may not be your customer, whatever you want me to be, I'll be, but, you know, just common customer service, I'm just asking you for an explanation. This doesn't make sense." Sean says, "That's it. Get out. Get out. Get out," repeatedly screaming at me, "Get out, get out, get out." And then he walks to the end of the counter and he comes around, and I said, "Wait a minute, I'm not getting out. Sean, this is a public restaurant. I'm here on an assignment with a company that you've contracted with to pick up this order. I'm simply asking you to answer a simple question. When was it picked up? Because I have it right here on my phone, and this doesn't make sense that you've made me wait 30 minutes and now telling me." So he said, "That's it. Get out of here. I'm going to throw you out." I'll call. And I said, then he approached me. He approached me and put his hand on my elbow, and I pulled away from him. I said, "Sean, I'm going to get out. Don't worry about it. I'll leave, but I don't need your help to do it." So he backs off and said, "If you don't get out, I'm calling the police." I said, "Fine, call the police. I haven't done anything wrong." Now, he's doing all the shouting. I have not shouted or raised my voice unusually except to respond to him at all. So Sean backs up again and continues to repeat, "Get out, get out, get out. I said, get out. I'm going to throw you out." Well, suddenly, and he did, suddenly as he's beginning to draw attention in the restaurant with his shouting, not mine, he moves on me again and takes my elbow. And at this point, somebody's behind me because I'm facing him. Somebody has come up behind me. I never saw who it was, but I know that somebody's behind me because they began to then motivate me toward the door, the two of them. I did see out of the corner of my eye somebody move around and open the door that I could go out the door. So when we got to the door, I sort of turned to shove my way back in because I began to realize what was happening. And as I turned, I said, "Wait a minute, what are you doing?" And at that point, boom, something knocked me. I felt myself flying in the air. I don't know whether I was thrown or whether I was like shoulder blocked somewhere or another, but I was not gently pushed. I was knocked clean across the street, across the sidewalk. When I woke up, and it did knock me totally out. When I woke up, I was on my back with my head at the curb on top of a little round steel grating there that was looks like some kind of water drainage pipe. I'm not sure what kind of pipe it was. But I woke up in a daze. And as I tried to get up, I was unable to get up right away. I was on my hands and knees for several seconds trying to get to my feet. And when I did get to my feet, I was dizzy and unsteady, and I saw a crowd of people beginning to gather, and I saw Sean standing there, smirking. Now, Sean, in his statement to the police, stated that he tried to come out and help me. That did not happen. Be it known that nobody tried to help me up at that restaurant. Nobody ever brought me at any point a wet rag or anything. So as I stood up, I could feel the blood flowing from the back of my head. As it turned out, I had to go to the hospital. I had a 9-inch gash in the back of my head. They called it a laceration. Yes, I do. For those people who question that, I do have the hospital records. The doctor did stitch up my head with 6 staples. So when I got up, I was basically unable to stand, and people started saying, "Man, you need to go to the hospital. You need to go to the hospital. You're bleeding." So people were beginning to gather, and at this point, at some point, an ambulance arrived in the street, and they began to try to get me to get in the ambulance, and I was a little reluctant to because I wanted to wait on the police. Somebody said, "Call the police." I don't remember which order, but I went to the ambulance. And they wanted to take me to the hospital, and I said, "No, I want to talk to the police about this before I go anywhere." So they had me sign a release, which I did. And when I got out, there were 2 young policemen there. And they asked me what happened, and I told them that I went here to deliver an order, and the man ordered me out, and then he threw me out on my head. And they said, the policeman, I think his name was, I want to say Gordon. I don't remember his name right off the top of my head, but he said, "Well, the witnesses all said that you stumbled and fell." And I said, "What witnesses? You're talking about his employees in here?" And he said, "Well, yeah." Well, that's a lie. I did not stumble and fall. I was knocked. I wasn't pushed or even shoved. I was knocked or thrown out the door on my head. Now, I have photos to show where I have a big bruise on my back here when that happened. I have the big laceration on the back of my head. I have pictures of my hands. I have no scrapes on my hands or on my face anywhere, which, you know, if a person falls on his face, and I can show you what a person looks like. I have a friend of mine sent me a picture. He said, "This is what you look like when you fall on your face. You know, scratched face, bruises on your face." I had none of that. At my back, my head laceration, where I had flown across the street. I didn't stumble or stagger or crawl over there. I was thrown. So what happened then, they took the report. He went in, took the report inside from whatever witnesses, which Sean had told about in town that he had a dozen witnesses. The only witness in the end that showed up on the police report was one of his waitresses, who is also his wife, his 6th wife, I might add. I add that because I've spoken to a couple of his ex-wives, and this man has an abusive and violent history. child abuse history, a history of avoiding child support and things like that. I've heard enough rumor to indicate that this man has a violent history. Although I had a background check run on him and nothing. There's no history. There's no history of any kind that he's had that I have found so far. In any event, I went to the hospital. Dr. Allman over there put the staples in my head. And the next morning, I went over to the police department to get the report. They told me it would be a week to 10 days. I said, well, would you call the chief? Let me talk to the chief. So Chief Brooks came by. And I asked him about it, and he said, well, the report was out for approval, that it would be a few days before I could get it. But he said, well, let me look on the computer. Well, I can tell you what the report said. So he looked on his computer and he read it to me, and basically the officer had spoken to me, and the officer said that he had spoken to Sean Roundsavall, and that Sean Roundsavall said that I came in and caused trouble and was disorderly, and he asked me to leave, and I wouldn't leave, and so he threw me out, admitting that he put his hands on me and that he shoved me out the door. It was much more than that, but he did admit that much. In the report, they also had the hearsay statement, no written statements at all here. Nobody made a written statement on it, of Sean's wife saying that she heard the disturbance in there, heard Sean ordering me multiple times to get out, and heard me being disorderly. She didn't hear that because it didn't happen. And she wasn't even in there. I never saw her the whole time. But she claimed that she came in, and I went off on her. Sean calls it bowed up, that I bowed up at him. I don't know exactly what he means by that, except I resisted him. Anyway, she said that I went off on her, and Sean had to step in between us to protect her, sort of. And that's when Sean ordered me to leave and escorted me out. That didn't happen at all. She only said that because she's his wife, and to make it look like that the whole thing was because I was attacking her. That never happened. In any event, I talked to the Chief Brooks, and he said the report would be ready in a couple of days, on Thursday. So I went by to pick up the police report on Thursday, and he said, well, it's all the same except the other officer, Sergeant Weber, had added his statement to the report, which was basically the same thing as the first. And as I read the report, I immediately noticed that Sean is listed here as the victim. And then both of us are listed as the, what's the other side? Perpetrator, defendant, or whatever, but Sean was listed as the victim. And as they had questioned Sean, Sean claimed that I came in and started the trouble and blah, 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 what I just said happened. And the officer said that Mr. Roundsavall has declined to press charges against Mr. Albritton for his disorderly conduct. Now, it just seemed a little strange to me, and there seemed like a little bias here for some reason or other toward me. After all, you show up to a scene, and here's one guy bleeding like a stuck pig with a 9-inch gash in his head, and you immediately refer to the other guy as the victim. Based on no testimonies, there were no witness testimonies, no written witness testimony. Now, subsequently, there were maybe 3 or 4 testimonies coming in on Facebook comment saying that this man, Mr. Albritton, is lying and this didn't happen. None of them were there. None of them saw anything. But yet, it's all hearsay. When I looked at the report, I told the chief, this report is inadequate. There are no sketches. There are no pictures. I'm standing here bleeding, and, you know, these police officers, they have equipment. They have guns. They have shotguns. They have all kinds of radio equipment. They don't have cameras? You mean a guy standing on the corner, they never took a picture. Now, the picture that I published is the picture my wife took at the emergency room. The police never took a picture. They never got any witness names. All they did was refer to all the witnesses said. In fact, they didn't even do that. They said that Mrs. Roundsavall said that all the witnesses said. Okay? There are no witness statements, no names of witnesses. So I protested that. I said, I want to file charges for assault. This guy assaulted me. Well, we don't do that. You have to go down to see the magistrate. You have to write up your statement and go down to see the magistrate. I said, okay. So I went home. I wrote up my detailed statement of what happened, which I will make available to anybody, and I'll stick by. That is what happened. I take it down to the magistrate. The magistrate kind of hums and haws as if he doesn't want to do anything. And he says, well, let me call the investigator. So he calls the fellow down there who is the Atmore investigator, a man by the name of Matt Jernigan, who comes down and he says, well, I'm gonna walk down there and see if I can get a copy of the tape. So he goes down there, the videotape that he's supposed to have in there, which subsequently he's told 2 or 3 stories about, that the tape, his cameras are fake. There is no tape. In any event, there's obviously no tape. If there ever was one, which I believe there probably was, it's been destroyed because it would reveal the truth. And so he never got back to me. A couple of days went by. Matt Jernigan never called me back. So I went back to see the Van Hughes, the magistrate. And he says, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and investigate myself. I'm going to bring these witnesses in. I said, look, you know, at a minimum, there's probably going to be a civil suit on this, and your police report is not adequate to support anything. It's just, all it is just hearsay, and it's biased, even names the other guy as the victim. This is not sufficient. There are witnesses there. I can tell you who they were, but you got to ask them. There's no interviews. He said, I'm going to go down there and try to get that tape, and I'm going to interview all the witnesses and get them under oath. I'm going to bring them in here and get them under oath. I said, okay, that's a great idea. I'll go along with that. And so for a month went by. During that month, I'll tell you other people I had talked to. I've also talked to the DA, Steve Billy, who says it's not a felony, because I said, I don't know why this is not a felony. A guy drops you on your head on the cement sidewalk. Well, Billy says to rise to the level of a felony, it has to be serious. Busting my head on the sidewalk is not serious. No, if the result is you survived. So I says, if I was in the hospital in a coma in intensive care, that would probably be a felony. Yes, that's right. Okay, I'm hard-headed and I survived, so it's a misdemeanor. Okay. The other thing is you have to have there's no weapon. If he'd have hit you with a baseball bat or a hammer, that'd probably be a felony. Okay, well, I don't know really which one hurts the worst, hitting somebody over the head with a baseball bat or throwing them out on their head on the cement sidewalk. In any event, I got you. And there has to be intent. He has to have intent to cause this injury. So, well, you got me there. I'm not saying that the man had intent to cause this injury, but to me, he should have known if he thrown an old guy out on his head like this, that he might be injured. To me, it's kind of like if you're sitting in your backyard target practicing, shooting at targets, and you shoot and kill somebody 3 or 4 blocks over, you should have known. If you didn't know, you should have known. Okay, nevertheless, the DA says this doesn't rise to the level of a felony, therefore it cannot be tried in a district court or a circuit court. It has to be tried in the city municipal court. So I go back to the magistrate, and he proceeds to say he's going to investigate. 3 weeks go by. Each week on Tuesday, the day that he's supposed to be in there, I go by there, and I said, what's the progress on the case? Well, I've still got witnesses I'm interviewing. Still interviewing witnesses. So on the third Tuesday, I go by, and he tells me the same thing. I've got one more witness to interview tomorrow. I said, okay, well, Van, can you just give me some indication of which way this thing is leaning? He said, well, it's not looking good for you. So I've interviewed the witnesses. They all take his side, and so doesn't look like we're going to file any charges. I said, you're not even going to file any charges at all? What we had talked about was assault and battery. No. I said, well, okay, what about the statements you've done? You've been 3 weeks now taking these sworn statements. How can I get access to those? You can't. I can't even have access to those. No, because they're not public documents. And why are they not public documents? Because it has to go to trial, has to go to court before it becomes public. Now, this is when a little light went on in my head as to why we found after all these rumors of violence of Sean Renzeval, absolutely no history of it, no record of it. Well, I guess it never went to trial, therefore it's not public. I don't know if I believe that or not, but apparently that's the law. So I have talked about this. I've talked to the mayor, Jim Staff. Jim Staff says, I said, Jim, have you heard about this incident that happened? Well, yeah, I heard something about it. Did my name come up? Did you know that I was involved? Oh, yeah, I heard you was involved in it. But that's all I know. That's all I know about it. I said, well, you know, Jim, I've known you for probably 40 years. You know, we've had our differences. I ran for mayor against Jim a few years ago. But in spite of it all, we've been friends. I believe if I were the mayor and this happened to you, I believe I would have been a little more curious than you are as to what happened. I believe I would have maybe even reached out to you to ask you how you're doing. So, but never mind. I said, I'm not here to ask you for anything, but I'm here to apprise you of what really happened and to bring you in the loop. Because later, if this thing comes back to bite you, I don't want you to say that, hey, I didn't know anything about it, I wasn't in the loop. I'm putting you in the loop. So I put the mayor in the loop. And he said, I'm gonna look into it. So he goes down, he calls me a little later, and it says he talked to Chuck Brooks. He said, Lloyd, I talked to Chuck, and Chuck said he told you have to file this with the magistrate. I said, Jim, what, were you asleep while we were talking? This is what we're talking about. I already filed it with the magistrate a month ago. And I've talked to him every weekend, and now he's telling me that it doesn't look like he's going to file any charges. So I want to know why there's not enough evidence to file any charges. Okay, well, let me go down and talk to the magistrate. So Jim goes down to talk to the magistrate. I'm going to get back to you in just a little bit. Jim never calls me back. A day or two go by. Jim never gets back to me, the mayor. So I call my city councilman. Sean Lassiter comes over to my house. And I explained to Sean what's going on. And I said, all right, Sean, at a very minimum, the magistrate says he's not going to file the charge. The mayor is not getting back to me on this. So I'd like to file a complaint against the police department. Would you advise me of what the procedure is to file a complaint against the police department? Oh, I don't know, but I'm going to find out for you. I'm going to certainly look into this, and I'm going to get back to you. About 2 hours later, the mayor calls me back. Now, I'm only speculating that Sean leaves me and goes and talks to the mayor, and the mayor says, let me handle this, don't bother to get back, because Sean Lassiter has not gotten back to me. Nobody has gotten back to me. I've talked to Heath Jackson. Heath expressed sympathy. Oh, this is a terrible, terrible thing. And so when this happened, I sent Keith a text message. Keith, will you consider taking over this investigation? I'm not getting a fair shake here. No word from Heath either. No word from anybody. All right? But Jim did finally call me back after I had talked with the city councilman. And he says, Lloyd, let's see, what was he said? He says, we're not going to file the charges. He said, we can't file charges on this. And I said, well, why not? I said, because there's no evidence. I said, Jim, what about the 9-inch gash on my head and the bruise on my back? What about the evidence that there's a crime here? What about the statement that Sean made to the police admitting that he put his hands on me and that he pushed me out the door? That's not evidence? Oh, well, it sure seemed like it would be, don't it? Yes, it does seem like it would be, Jim. Well, anyway, I talked to Chuck, and he says, what you got to do is you got to file a criminal complaint. Again, good old Jim. Jim, this is a criminal complaint. This is what I'm talking about that y'all won't let me file. It is a, well, I must mean, yeah, a civil. A civil complaint. Oh, shoot, I don't know the difference on those things, but yeah, a civil. This is Jim. I'm emulating Jim. If you know him, probably not a bad impersonation. In any event, a civil complaint. I said, but Jim, I can't file a civil complaint because there's no evidence. The police have not done their job. They have not investigated. They have done nothing but went in and talked to both parties and wrote it down. There's no evidence of anything. I don't have any evidence to file a civil complaint. Well, that's what you got to do. Got to file a civil complaint. And so there you go. I've talked to 3 or 4 lawyers already. They're not interested in the case. There's no money in it for them, okay? They tell me that to start with, on a misdemeanor complaint, you can basically only get your medical expenses, and there's no pot for them to dip out of. There's no video. Without a video, or do you have any witnesses? No, I don't have any witnesses. I'm not Sammy Davis Jr. I don't take an entourage of people on my food deliveries. So I was there. Anybody that knew me that would testify for me, I don't know if they were there or not. I have no witnesses. And the only witnesses he had was his wife and maybe his cook, who I suspect is the one who helped him to throw me out. So the deck is stacked. So I have avoided, up until this point, going public with this thing because I didn't want to get down in the dirt about it. But you know, the last resort for the little guy, sometimes the last resort is to simply the truth, to tell the truth. I don't own a newspaper. The newspapers haven't even reported this. Now, they'll report a raccoon dying down on the street corner if Mayor Stout hits him with a boat paddle over in Gulf Shores. They'll report that. But a citizen bleeding in the middle of town, ambulance in the middle of town, they don't get wind of that story. So it's not been reported in the news. I have no access to this. So only thing I have is a little old Facebook account. So I posted it on Facebook, and it has sort of gone viral in town. Many people have been overwhelmingly supportive, recognizing the truth of the matter. And anybody who asked for this, I've asked them, well, I can't post this stuff on Facebook. I don't know how to start with. They won't let me post. But give me your email and I'll send you the documents. And I'll make that offer to anybody. I'll send you the documents, my full written sworn statement, as well as the inadequate police report. I'll send that to you. I have it. I have a copy of it. I doubt you'll be able to get it now because they say it hasn't gone to court, so it's not really a public document. So therefore another. So I've fretted about this. What is going on here? Why have I, a lifetime citizen of this town, a good citizen, my wife is a citizen, why are they treating me this way? Well, it suddenly dawned on me that I'm wrong. It's not me. It's everybody. There are other cases. I have encountered numbers of cases in town where the police have inadequately investigated. Murder cases, assault cases, various different things. Why are they doing that? Well, I'm going to give you my speculation. This is my tape. I can do it. If you go and look at it, I'm saying what I believe. This guy came into town and started a little dress shop. He's had 2 or 3 shops downtown. He's rented these empty buildings. Atmore has been frantic for several years to get people in Atmore to have businesses. So he did that. He's closed down most of them, and he moved across the street, rented that building, and started the little ice cream parlor, which has worked pretty well for him. So he started the grill. Seems to be working pretty well. God bless him. I wish him well. But the city of Atmore has had incidents of his violence. They have not recorded. They have covered it up so that it's not on file in order for him to have his license to do these businesses. That's what I speculate. It's the only reason why, because I have got personal testimony from other people of his violence. She choked down his own stepson, beat him up and choked him down. And when he went to the police department, Sean goes over there and threatens him not to file charges. It's there. And so the only thing I can do to hurt him is to boycott his business. And this is not done through malice. This is done through my feeble attempt to extract justice from a system, a place where there is no justice. Is there anger? Oh, there's some anger. I'm not going to die with this anger. I'm not going to let it kill me, but I'm still not the kind of guy. I spent 8.5 years in the Marine Corps, and I've always stood up. I am not going to just lay down and prostrate myself for this kind of injustice for the city of Atmore or for this petty criminal here, a psychopath. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to do what I can. Now, they may pull me off of Facebook altogether. I'm surprised it's lasted this long. But I'm going to post this video for any of you who care enough to look at it and ask you to boycott this place. Do not eat there. The man is a maniac. The man is a liar. The man is not a good citizen. Atmore is involved in this. Now, I am feckless to do anything about it. Lawyers won't take the case because there's no money in it for them as far as the civil suits. The lawyers tell me we can't make the city file a criminal charge. We can't make the DA file a charge. We can't make the magistrate do anything. They have autonomy. They can do what they want to. And that's what they're doing. It's what they want to. They do not, they want this man's business because he's paying taxes. Hey, I understand that. But we can't abrogate justice for common citizen just because Atmore wants a little more tax money from this idiot. That's my story. I'm simply trying to shed light on the subject. You can believe me or you cannot believe me. You can come over to my house and talk to me. You can call me on the phone. I'll tell you the same story every time. I'm trying to shed light on the subject. When you turn the light on in the kitchen and you got roaches in the house, the roaches scatter. The rats scatter. They cannot stand light. Evil can never stand light. And so that's all I have, is to shed light on this subject, and I'm posting this video for your edification and your benefit. If you're interested, you can go here and watch this and decide for yourself what needs to be done in this very serious case of injustice in Atmore, Alabama. Thank you for your time.